Morning, everybody. Today, a mountaineering class. Oh, wait a minute. Is that what I'm supposed to be talking? Lava mountain. Yes, we're going to go up a lava mountain, which is a Wuyi cliff tea. And we're going to talk about that today. So by the end of today's session, you'll have had a little review of the process of making Wuyi cliff teas, not detailed. You will have heard me use a bunch of longer scientific words. Hopefully I use them correctly. And also, you'll learn about grassy bounce back. So you'll have a good grasp of all these things by the end of today. So let's start with shop news. This is the last weekend. So for all of you who want to avoid two things: tea emergencies and tea terror. The way to avoid those is to come into the shop either today or tomorrow and purchase and stock up on anything that you think will be missing during the time we're gone. Reminder, April 3rd, that's Monday, we leave. We actually get on the plane April 3rd. And May 6th, we return. That's a Saturday, so we'll have a session on that Saturday. The 4 sessions that will be traveling during are pre-recorded. So every Saturday morning, you'll see a session show up on YouTube. And you'll be able to listen to that. The one thing you won't be able to do is directly ask me questions. But if you have questions, email me, and I will respond to those questions as I get an opportunity. Everybody for this last couple of weeks has been asking us, you excited about Japan? Are you all ready to go? And truthfully, the answer is, both Xiaobei and I have been diligent about Japan, not excited. I'll tell you why. Because we have so many things to do in preparation to going, including contacting the relevant parties in Japan and fiddling around with itineraries, that this is all work. Once we get on that plane on Monday, we'll be excited. So for those of you who are excited and are ready, in quotes, pulling the trigger, let me remind you of this. Xiaobei and I, when we go anywhere and talk about tea, are usually going to create a relationship before we actually buy tea. Japan will probably be no exception, although we'll be open and we will follow whatever the rules that we're supposed to follow. And an admission right away, because I'm wearing my truth shirt today, so I have to tell the truth. The admission is we don't know exactly to the finest level all the details about whether we're supposed to purchase when we go to a farm this year, how much we're supposed to purchase, because the Japanese have their own rhythm. Their rhythm is different from the Chinese rhythm. This will be the first time of really spending time at farms in Japan, so we'll learn about that rhythm. Our intention is always to establish the relationships before we actually get into a purchasing relationship, but we'll follow whatever the rules we're supposed to follow. All right, let's get to Lava Mountain. Lava Mountain is from the Wuyi Mountains. Wuyi Mountains are northern Fujian Province. It's truly a cliff tea. It's right on the border. It's actually in the mountain, but it's very close to the half in the mountain location. Remembering, for those of you who are first timers on today's session, that within the mountain, there's a 7.7 square kilometer area within the Wuyi Mountains that's defined as within the mountain. And when you use that term, What is that term? Zhengyan. When you use that term, automatically the zeros before the decimal point increase. In other words, this stuff is expensive because the thought of tea from this area is you get the truest taste of cliff teas. You get the most, in quotes, rock rhythm. Rock rhythm is very hard to define in a way that the Western palate can easily understand. But if you forced me to give you an easy definition, I would say the following. There has to be some sense of minerality. So you have to taste the rock in the tea. Now it sounds weird. Who puts rocks in their tea? That's not what I mean. That's what's said, but it's the minerality, because this is grown in volcanic soil within the mountain, and you always have minerality. So that distinguishes when you get out of the Wuyi Mountains. When tea is growing and it's outside the Wuyi Mountains, can it have that minerally taste? No, because it's not grown on volcanic soil. Why isn't high mountain tea from Taiwan cliff tea? By definition, the Chinese government already defined cliff tea as very specifically from this area. And from a literature standpoint, every time people historically have referred to rock rhythm, rock rhyme, cliff tea, it's always been tea from this area. As a quick reminder, Wulong tea was invented in this area. So when was it invented? It was invented sometime late in the Ming Dynasty. So Ming Dynasty, approximately 1368 to 1635 or so. You may find different dates in your history books, but this is close enough. So in the late 1500s, who was developing this? It was Buddhist monks, Taoist monks, for the most part. Why? They had time on their hands. They traveled between their temples. They shared knowledge freely. The Taoists were still in some way the leading experimenters with all goods. Why? They were looking for an elixir. What sort of an elixir? A long life elixir. Immortality is what they were looking for. So they were experimenting with everything. And that made them the scientists, the experimenters, the product developers. They and the Buddhists had temples throughout the Wuyi Mountains. The Confucianists had institutions within the mountain. This was one of the only places where everybody cooperated. It's easy to cooperate when you have the best tea in the world, isn't it? Oh, I disagree with your philosophy. Let's have a cup of tea. And then you enjoy that tea and you forget your philosophical differences for that period of time. Hey, maybe we should be doing the same here.
Yes.
Yes. Maybe if we could just get all those leaders to sit down, get out a really great cup. Earthquake, yes, or cloak of heaven. And serve that to all the leaders. Maybe everybody could forget their differences and say, you know what? You're not such a bad guy. Let's cooperate. So this is what that place looked like. It was magical. And they produced this style of tea, which is some of the most complex tea produced in China, some of the most high-value tea produced in China. Some of the teas within this area using this process have 30 plus steps. No matter what They all take at least 3 months to process. Process meaning pick to package. In China, in this area, when they package, they usually don't put it on the market right away. Now, we get the stuff early, so we put it on the market a little sooner. But usually they wait till the following Chinese New Year. So really, they pick in April, and the new stuff, let's re-say that, the processed tea comes out the following January or February. That's usually what happens. All right. So you have all these steps. What out of these steps is important? I mean, I guess you got to make a correct pick. Yeah, that's true. A bud and 2 leaves, a bud and 3 leaves. You got to be careful when you pick. You got to get from pick to the production area. It's got to be fast. And then you wither. And you have several styles of withering, all with the same leaves. And by the way, you do this by day. You don't accumulate this. You got to do it by day. And the first withering is usually a couple hours. And it's usually outdoors unless it's raining. If it's raining, they have an indoors humidity control, temperature control facility. You will get a different result when it's raining versus when you're able to go through the steps naturally. And you wither 4 or 5 or 6 times. Why are you doing that? Why don't you just wither once in one place? Wouldn't that be cheaper? Oh, yes, it would be cheaper, but it wouldn't be the process. Withering, along with roasting, are 2 of the most important processes when you're making cliff teas. Why is withering important? What happens when you wither? Wither to me sounds, you get old, you lose water. That's what it sounds like to me. Let's explore this a little bit more carefully. Within the plant cells, oh good, I get to use a big word, you have vacuoles. V-A-C-U-O-L-E, something like that. And that's a structure that has bounds on it. And in the plant cells, by and large, by the way, humans have some of these things, animals have some of these things, but they're a little different. But in the plant, they're mostly filled with water. So the water, when it reduces in these vacuoles, and by the way, you don't have to remember this. I just used the word because it sounded so good. And I knew you'd think I was really smart if I used it. So when the water reduces through withering, what happens to the flavor? What happens to the leaf itself? It facilitates the enzymatic process of oxidation. Remember, oxidation is a chemical reaction. And what it is, it's as soon as something is exposed to the air, to oxygen, to other compounds as well, those combine with the interior of the leaf, and they start a process where the chemical constituents change. Okay, I said a bunch of words, managed to slip in one very large word. Let's continue in this vein. I'm having fun in the science world. In a few minutes, you'll be tired of it, but I'm having fun currently. What chemical constituents are changing? The catechins. So everybody's heard of catechins. Those are the alleged anti-cancer, anti-tumor, and in the test tube, they really are this way. And everybody's excited about these things because through meta studies, through direct studies, they found that they're good for heart health. They may be beneficial in defeating cancer. We don't know. We can't say that statement out loud with 100% certainty. But certainly science is bubbling around these studies. All right, so those are some of the main chemical constituents that are changing. In fact, if you ask me to give you a number Hey, you got a bunch of chemical constituents in this leaf. You're withering it over several hours. We understand that we want oxidation. We're setting up to shake the leaves so we can bruise them and get fast oxidation. What sort of constituents are these changing into? Is there some other magic constituent? Something called theaflavins, something called theorubicins. These are also phenolic constituents. You know, I just did that to play with you. Polyphenols. That's, you recognize polyphenols. You may not recognize phenolic. That's what I meant. And polyphenols have the characteristic of being helpful to human health. Now, I know you want to ask me, okay, do they cure cancer? We don't know. Do they make my digestion better? Anecdotally and observationally, theaflavins and theorubicins seem to be quite good for digestion. So 78% of these catechins and catechin-like constituents during this withering process form other chemicals. What happens to the caffeine and other alkaloids within the tea leaf? Do they change too? Answer is no. They stay stable, not moving. But the polyphenols are changing. And as they change, volatiles are being developed. What are volatiles? Things that you can smell, things you're going to be able to taste. So this is the foundation for aroma and taste. This is why withering and the setup to this oxidation is so important, because this is the precursor to getting all of these great flavors that we end up with. Now, I think we're going to stay in science 2 or 3 more minutes before the tea master suddenly realizes that I'm overspeaking. So these compounds are flavonoids. And within the flavonoids, there are 6 main categories. And so you've got flavanols. And so what contains flavanols? Things like kale, vegetables, onions, red grapes, white grapes, tea. Then you have something called flavin-3-ols, OLS. And those are heavily concentrated in teas. Then you have flavones. Those are concentrated in things like chamomile and parsley and celery. I mean, these are all good things. Have you heard me say white sugar yet? No, you haven't said white sugar yet. Let's go down the list because I said 6. Then you have flavonones. What are those in? Lemons, limes, oranges, in other words, citrus. Okay? Then you have isoflavones, soybeans. And those are helpful for hormone health, apparently balancing hormones. And then you don't have, the last one doesn't begin with F, it begins with A, anthocyanins. These are some of my favorites, and yours too, because they're all in berries, blueberries, strawberries, cranberries. So all of these would fall under the category of flavonoids. They're all antioxidants, which are good for human health. It is thought that antioxidants fight against the compounds that are created when humans encounter allergens, germs, and toxins and other irritants. Oh, so you mean when my neighbor's playing loud music and I'm trying to sleep? Yes, that's an irritant. And therefore you create substances, stressor substances And if you are eating your dark chocolate and all these other things, this is helpful. All right. So we've got you squared away from the alleged health benefits. I thought we'd start there today. Tea Master has looked at me and given me the look like, what gives here? When am I going to come on and demonstrate? And the answer is right now. It is my wonderful pleasure to bring forth Sohpie, the Tea Master.
Hi, good morning. 早上好. Yeah, my name is Sophie. Thank you. So we do Yan Cha. It's from Wuyi Mountains. It's Oolong tea. So similar to it's my space. So yeah.
So watch how she has the tableau set up, 2 cups and a clay pot. If you have a ceramic pot, that's okay. And you want the volume of that pot to be 12 to 16 ounces if possible. Glass is the least acceptable because glass dissipates heat. Wulongs like concentrated heat because those volatiles are baked on. And when you get concentrated heat, that's when the florals, the fruits, the caramel, the woodsy, all of that comes out. Chocolatey. So she's going through, Tea Master's going through and making sure she's using 200-degree water and heating everything, making sure all the glasses are absolutely clean. And we're not in a hurry when we're doing this. We're really in a rhythm more than a hurry. And that way you're going to get a repeatable, great experience every time you do this tea. You notice she's double checking to make sure there are no stray leaves left in there. In clay pots, it's easy unless you thoroughly wash them out and have stray leaves in there. Stray leaves create stray flavor. Do we like stray flavor? No, we want as concentrated a flavor as possible. All right, so the Tea Master is getting ready to, from bag number 3, transfer the leaves. That's 5 grams into the pot.
Because all the movement is I put the same, the Chinese style, even the large. So yeah.
So all movements, whether it's small cup or large cup, actually are very nearly identical. So we're not so far away from small cup as people imagine, because the principles we observe, it's the same principles that are in small cup. All right, so she put the leaves in, she shook the leaves, trying to get that heat distributed, and now she's drawing 200-degree water, which in a minute she'll add. All right, and she's adding it carefully, not in a hurry. Trying not to exactly pour directly on the leaves, but eventually you're going to hit the leaves, so don't worry about it. Fills the pot. Oh, and she puts extra on the outside. Aha. She's further heating the pot. This brings a better flavor. So if you can do the following, what you just saw her do, you'll get a better flavor. All right. So we talked about how important withering is as a precursor to getting an eventual flavor, great flavor for these cliff teas. We're going to move quickly to roasting. because roasting is also extremely important to the end result of clip teas. So what's in between withering and roasting? Well, numerous steps. One of those steps is shaking the leaves. So after you've withered, you get them on a bamboo, you shake them. If you are using more mechanized methodology, you put them in a drum, and it's the equivalent of shaking. When you're actually physically shaking, you have the objective, which sounds ridiculous until you actually see them do it, of having the leaves land on their edges, because they're really trying to bruise the edges of the leaves. What they want when it's completely hand done is to have the edges of the leaves very red, because they're the bruised part, and to have the centers of the leaves not so red. Now, when you're in a drum, you get what you take what you get, and that's that. But when it's the hand, that's what they're aiming for. And the hand takes longer than the drum. The drum, you do it a couple times, 2 or 3 times, and each time a different amount of time, and you're trying to make sure that each time you take it out, you're making a determination as a producer, okay, this is bruised enough, or no, this is not bruised enough. And they have so-called coming back to life of leaves, where it's really interesting. When you take it out, you spread out the leaves, and then they seem to expand again. And what that is water from the stem going back into the leaf, and then they go ahead and redo the shaking, whether it's in the drum or by hand. After shaking, then you fix the leaf. Well, that sounds like it's broken and it needs to be repaired. No, this is the term they use to stop the oxidation. And how do you do that? You do that by applying high heat, usually somewhere between 350 to 400 degrees. And you're usually doing it in a drum. No, it's if you're doing it by hand, you're actually doing it in a wok. All right, 3 minutes is finished. Tea master is separating the leaves from the teapot. Not in a hurry. Making sure every last drop gets out of that teapot. Because you don't want to keep steeping the tea, do you? I mean, you're going to get a second steeping out of this, right? Oh my God, look at that. Beautiful, beautiful color. Let's lift it up and see what kind of beautiful color. Oh, very nice. Red amber is how I would characterize this. And you know what? I'm getting ready to enter the quality arena. I don't even have to really put my nose down in this. I can already smell it. But of course, we're gonna do the proper steps here. Remember, this is 200-degree water. Very careful, so you can't put your nose too close. And when you take that first sip, is that sip a real sip? No, it's an inhalation of a few drops of tea. You don't blow on the tea, because if you blow on the tea, you blow away the aroma. When you do that inhalation, you accentuate that aroma through this process. So you let the tea cover your tongue. And as you do that, you're looking for several things. You're looking for, okay, where's the astringency? There's going to be astringency, always. How much? Small, medium, heavy. Okay, make a judgment. Where? Roof of the mouth, back of the tongue, front of the tongue. Okay. After you've swallowed, is there an aftertaste? What kind of aftertaste? Does this tea linger somehow in your mouth? And then lastly, something that usually takes a little bit more time is you determine What sort of physical effect do you feel? Do you feel warm? Do you feel cooling? Do you feel calming? Do you feel good digestion? I mean, there's any number of reasonable reactions, physical reactions. And the fact that we have different ones is not a problem. Because remember, we're genomically different. So my expectation is we're going to have within certain range some different reactions. All right. I want to verify, and particularly when I do this second sip, when I take this second inhalation, not only am I verifying what I think I just learned during the first inhalation, I'm also beginning to think about aroma. I'm beginning to think about taste and start to produce a profile in my head of this tea. And remember, during this set, you've had 3 Wulong teas. The first one was a cliff tea, Mischief. The second one last week was Harmony, which was a southern Fujian Oolong tea, not a cliff tea. And now we're back in the cliff tea. All right, second inhalation. Truly not in a hurry. Thinking about what I just experienced. This is an unbelievable experience. And I think you're going to be fascinated by some of the primary tastes that this leaves you with. All right, your turn to brew. So I'm going to ask the tea master to come up here and brew with you. And you notice the tea master is very careful and makes sure that all the leaves from that first brewing have left the pot, because you don't want to influence the flavor. You want the true flavor. She draws her 200-degree water, just as I hope you prepared. Pours it over the pot. Remember, heat is important. So I think when we're brewing, there tends to be an overlooking of the steps, because you hear people, oh yeah, I get the tea. Yeah, I get it that it should be 5 grams. Okay, I get that. Okay, I'm very careful with that. Okay, I don't have lotion on my hands. I'm very, very careful with that. Okay, I have this pot. Okay, great. Throw it in, throw in the water, and then boom. That's it. It'll brew itself. The answer is no. Each of these steps contributes to the final outcome. Do you want the best final outcome? I'll tell you what, at $65 an ounce, I want the best final outcome. And the best final outcome comes when you heat as best you can the pot itself, because you're gonna get all those volatiles released. And that's really, at the end of the day, what you need. All right, you're getting ready to pour the water in. 200-degree water. You've set the timer for 3 minutes. Pour hot water, the 200-degree water on the outside of the pot. And you pour 200-degree water in the cup, because when you get to the stage of putting it in the cup, you want the cup also to be hot. And you want there to be no influence of soap stains or anything else that may have inadvertently been left in the cup. So we were talking about the steps, and we've gotten to, we fixed. In other words, we stopped oxidation. Then, roughly speaking, we separate the leaves, anything that doesn't belong in the leaves, so inadvertent stems, inadvertent rocks. If any insects are still in there, you want all of those make sure all of those are out of there. And then we do a quick roast to stabilize the tea. Now, I used all these words. Let me give you the time frame so that you understand. The quick roast is done within 24 to 30 hours after the tea leaves reach the farm. Why are we stabilizing and why are we labeling? Because we're not really going to get to the intricate roasting until later. And tea comes in every day. You got to process the tea that comes in every day. You can't say, oh, this is like the Bay Bridge. It's backed up. It's going to take 2 hours this morning. Oh, no, not at the farm. You cannot use that as an excuse. Oh, there was an accident in the shaping area. No, that would be a fail. So that's why you produce all of this and stabilize it and label it, and then 30 days later, start to go back. Because for many of these producers, they're producing for 20 to 30 days and stabilizing before they get to the roasting. Now, I said the roasting is a marquee event, a very important event in determining what the flavor, ultimate flavor profile is going to be. So for those of you who've been on the broadcast before, you know that I never leave out terroir. So let's talk about that briefly before we actually start down. So from a terroir perspective, we as a farmer understand what the weather's been like. We understand which facing cliff this is coming off of, if it's coming off of a cliff. We understand what the rain profile has been during the year. We subconsciously understand what our cultural profile is in terms of we like a certain style or heaviness or lightness of taste. These things are all part and parcel of the terroir. So that is part of the consideration. I didn't mention varietal. I should have, because all these varietals have a difference, don't they? They have a distinct difference. And as such, that in effect is part of the terroir. So all of these elements are important in terms of a final result. But it's the roasting itself. And by the way, let's go ahead and start to go through the quality arena. So again, you're going to take a 200-degree inhalation. And really what you're looking at is the mouthfeel, astringency. After you swallow, is there an aftertaste? Does the tea linger in your mouth? You're going to look at density or lack thereof. You're going to look at energetics and see, how do I feel after drinking this tea? Is this tea narrow or is it huge? Is it mellow or is it harsh? You're going to look at all these things. And then when you take your second quality arena sip, you're going to look at, okay, I understand the qualities. What's the aroma and what's the taste? Yes.
One of the participants says, I can't seem to tell the difference in taste between Lava Mountain and Pellucid, another Sophie's Wulong. Is that because they're similar terroir? And then he adds, there's a definite lingering taste that reminds me of cliff teas.
So great comment. I love this comment for a couple reasons, and you'll see why by the end of my commentary, I like this comment. So the commentator says, okay, I'm not tasting a significant difference between Pellucid, which is a cliff tea that we have in the shop, and this tea. And I can definitely taste that this is a cliff tea. What's up with that? I can tell you exactly what's up with that. You're not tasting them side by side. If you had a cup of pellucid in front of you and a cup of this side by side, right away, and I'm going to give something away because this question requires me to give something away, you would note that pellucid's floral notes are big. So I ask you this, this is a rhetorical question. Are the floral notes in this big? No, they are not. There are big notes of stuff, but floral is subsumed under other notes. So again, the key, and this calls back to when there are competitions in the Wuyi Mountains, how do they do it? So what they do is they usually set up 30 or 40 cups. They use the same temp of water, the same grammage, and everybody has the same place. So everything is set up. The judge says, put the tea leaves in the cups, and they're small cups. They're about 6 to 8 ounces. And then they actually use boiling water. Now, there's a reason for that. And the reason we don't use boiling water is because we're not trying to do what they're trying to do. What they're trying to do is expose flaws in the tea. When you use boiling water during a competition, any lack of evenness, anything unusual in the flavor or aroma, point all over the place, and it's exposed. So that's their methodology. We're not using boiling water here. We're using 200-degree water because we already know the quality of these teas. But like I said, they have 30 or 40 or 50 of these. And so what do the judges do? They take a spoon, you know, one after another, wink, spit it out, and next one, spit it out, all the way down, take their notes, and then they do a second pour and go through that same process. And at the end of the day, when you do that, the differences between these teas become immediately apparent. And so, again, I love your comment, and because it gets us to talk about this and how to really distinguish these teas when you're thinking about, particularly a buying decision. Oh, should I get pellucid or mountain lava? Well, do them side by side, and then you'll know right away. Oh yeah, I'm going to get this because of that. All right. So we're continuing to this roasting process. And remember, I promised you that we were going to talk about grassy bounce back. Now, if you're in California, grassy bounce back sounds good. It sounds like you have a lot of rain at the end of March into April. You go out and you look at the hills and there are all these gradations of beautiful green. This is called, after a 10-year drought, grassy bounce back. Do you want in a cliff tea a flavor grassy bounce back? And the answer is no. So why do they roast so many times? Because typically at a certain temperature, you'll get this enormous grassiness coming through the other aromas. That's called grassy bounce back. And I will tell you, if any purveyor, you go into another tea shop and you ask them for their cliff teas and you ask them about grassy bounce back and see what they say. You ought to get a huge number of hilarious responses. But the number one thing you should not get, oh, grassy bounce back is good, because it is not. It's bad. you have done a bad roasting job if you get grassy bounce back. It's just like with the red tea. If you end up with, in quotes, a sour taste, I over oxidized. Grassy bounce back is I used a temperature and then did not check for that. And because I'm a lazy Cliff tea producer, I just put it on the market. Real Cliff tea producers realize this is going to happen. And so the second roasting through, they increase the temperature. So what's the temperature that creates grassy bounce back? It's about 220 to 230. When they roast a second time, they roast between 250 and 266. Now, it sounds like these are random numbers. If I had just told you this and hadn't had the explanation about grassy bounce back, you'd have thought to yourself, oh, you know what? I'm going to use my oven. I grow tea plants. I'm going to do Cliff tea at home, and I'm going to just roast it. And I'm going to just pick a temperature, and then you're going to get grassy bounce back. You're not even going to realize. You're going to just say, gosh, this tastes a lot different than the teas at Sophie. I wonder why that is.
He said that in tea tastings, high-level professional tea tastings within China, the boiling water is typically used for boiling water temperature. Water is used on Wulongs. What's used on green teas?
Great question. So the questioner said, all right, you gave us an incomplete picture. You told us what happens with Cliff teas. Would they use this ridiculously hard system on greens and whites? And the answer is no. They do use a hotter temperature, but it's not boiling. So they usually use something around 190 or so. So it's cooler, but the principle is the same. Hey, you know, as a green tea, you can dress up all beautiful and come out and all sparkly, but I'm not going to be fooled. I want to know what's underneath. I want to know that flavor, and I want to know it when it's stressed, because if there's something wrong, it'll be exposed. Yes.
One of the participants says the dry, warm leaves had a chocolate aroma, and then the steep leaves had less chocolate but more mineral. The tea liquor has a round honey caramel scent, and the roastedness is woven into the sweetness.
Love, love, love this comment, because the dry leaves, heated, chocolate flavor. Without question, chocolate dominates early. There's nothing else there except the chocolate. Not even the roast is able to sneak through. The wet leaves, they commented with honey, right?
The honey came later, the steep leaves, less chocolate, more mineral.
Oh, that's right, more mineral. So the steep leaves prove to you that this isn't a bait and switch. It's really a Cliff tea. You gotta have minerality. If you don't have that minerality, it ain't, oh no, it is not a Cliff tea. And then the wet leaves, there's caramel.
The tea liquor itself.
I'm sorry.
It was a very long comment. I shouldn't have read the whole thing at once. Sorry about that.
No,
But-
I said wet leaves, but I envisioned tea
Tea
liquor.
liquor,
So
round honey caramel, but with roastiness woven in.
Round honey caramel with roastiness woven in. Love this comment, because the heavier roasted Cliff teas, especially if they're from within the mountain, tend to, when they're expertly done, have that caramel nature to them, slight honey nature, and without doubt, particularly if they've gone through a third roast. This has gone through 3 or 4 roasts. They have that roastiness, and great use of language, because you didn't say smokiness. This is not smoky. It is roasty. You can, in a pinch, you can say charcoaly, but smoky, this is not smoky.
Another participant says she finds this remarkably juicy. There's a very slight astringency in the front of the mouth. And then it's slowly, energetically, slowly warming to the core. Mainly, however, for her, this is a very cerebral tea.
I really like this comment. And let me start with the conclusion, because the reason I like it's a very cerebral tea is because really what this commentator is saying is it presents a certain way and develops through that presentation. It is not one primary start to a primary finish of the same nature. It is not that. And so this commentator also notes a juiciness. Who usually says juiciness about a cliff tea? And yet, because it is so easy and mellow, sorry about that, because I know some of you are about to use that word. Pretend I didn't use that. But that's the reason that the juicy portion of this comes, and all of a sudden, from the usual challenging nature of cliff teas, you come to a cliff tea, even though it's called Lava Mountain, that's easy, that's juicy and cerebral.
Another participant says she's definitely got, or that there's definitely a lingering cocoa taste in the mouth of her.
Love, love, love this comment. You're coming back to what I immediately sensed when this was first steeped. And from a smell, from the first sip, I mean, this was full of cocoa, full of chocolate. In fact, you know, I had to take a look at the recording to make sure that the tea master didn't actually just dump chocolate in there, because it's that rich. Okay. So let's see how I'm doing. Oh, I'm still doing okay. We're in the roasting arena right now. And we're talking about how important the roast is and how we're trying to avoid grassy bounce back. In addition to avoiding grassy bounce back, what else is it we don't want to do? We don't want to, in quotes, over roast, because the only reason to over roast a tea like this is if you're trying to hide something. So if you blended varietals, or you think, you know what, my tea didn't come in so good this year. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pick all the leaves from all the farms. I'm going to give them really big roast, and then I'm going to call it Scarlet Roast. And I'm going to put it on the market for 10 times the price that you can put on the market. Terrible. And in the Wuyi Mountains, you'd be busted right away, because the farmers there, the discerning tea drinkers there, which, by the way, is everybody. Everybody who lives there drinks tea all the time, all day, and everywhere you go. When you're in the town, when you're in the village, everybody's drinking tea all day, even the kids. So one of the farmers, this cute little girl, at the age of 3 months, was already drinking cliff tea. And now, of course, they cooled it down. They didn't, this wasn't child abuse. They cooled it down to a temperature that the child, but the child wanted that. It's in their genome. Oh, wait a minute, I'm wearing this shirt. I guess I can't say that. Okay, that's not true. It seems like it's in their genome. Of course, that's ridiculous. All right, so that's the other aspect of roasting. You have to have judgment as to where you're going. And that judgment means that you want to hit one of the following flavor profiles as either part of a balanced flavor profile, or it can be a lead flavor profile. So you want either floral or fruity or caramel or chocolatey or woodsy. Better not have grassy in it. If there is a very, very slight hint of grass way down deep, that could be okay, especially if the other flavors are predominating. But you notice in most of the cliff teas here, you simply don't get that grassy because it's not considered the highest level of Wulong tea or of cliff tea. And obviously, when we purchase, we're looking for stuff like that. And there's a very specific reason, again, as I just went through this, which is they didn't roast it enough or they roasted it at too low a temperature. So there's always this game, not game, but balancing act as you make these teas that you have to have. Too high, over roast. And then you don't have all of these wonderful flavors. Too low, grassy bounce back. That's ugly. Just right, you have the five or six, I left out nutty, 5 or 6 flavor profiles that you typically get with very good cliff teas. Yes.
Participant asks, as we're learning that Wulong's flavors change over time, is there a way you can guess or anticipate where Wulong's flavor will go when you're evaluating a purchase?
This is a very great question. So the questioner asks, how smart do you have to be to figure out where a cliff tea is going to go as it mellows or ages? This is a really good question. And again, since I'm wearing the truth shirt, I have to tell the truth. So as that question was framed, there's something wrong with the frame. How I really should have framed it is experienced. You have to have lots and lots of tasting experience and history with cliff teas. If you don't have that, there is no formula that I can give you which will tell you it's going to be this way. And yet, if you ask the tea master, are we able to look at teas? So for example, we have something here that's very fearsome called Singular Treasure. And when you first have that thing, if you ever have it, you will be afraid because it is so powerfully affects the whole system. And it's like, oh my God, why did I just pay, X millions of dollars for this thing? This is way too powerful. We got this because, well, for several reasons, but one of the reasons is we could taste down into it and know that this is going to blossom as a beautiful tea. I'll give you an example that many of you have had, Aurora. When Aurora first came in here, Xiaobei and I looked at each other after we first got it and said, you know what? Let's kind of direct customers to other places on the board. Edgy. Lots of minerality and edginess. Within 45 days, strong hints of fruit, juicy. And all of a sudden, hey, you haven't had Aurora yet. Let's have Aurora. And customers never realized it was out of this world difficult and it just needs some time to rest. But when we tasted it, we knew right away we had to have this thing because we could taste down into it. So that's the real answer to this question.
You've mentioned grassy as one of the things you never want to experience out of the Wulong tea. Are there other flavors that you and other experts in the tea industry would detect and feel like, wow, I don't like where this tea is gonna go, or I think that this has been maybe not the greatest tea, but that's been roasted heavily.
Yes, so the question is, I've already identified as a tea swear word, grassy bounce back. What other tea attributes, tea flavor or aroma attributes might we be looking for, which would signal that there's a problem with the quality of tea? This is cliff teas. So one is an over roasted tea. We've talked about that. That's pretty straightforward. What is not as straightforward, but is part of the conversation, is when you see the tea leaves themselves. It's not so much a flavor. If you see that the tea leaves are broken up too finely, you got a problem there. It's not going to give you a true flavor of that varietal. And therefore, we would pass on that right away. It's going to give you an over flavor, a flavor which doesn't really reflect what the true loose leaf flavor. So that would be something. Anything that smelt of mold would be unacceptable. And, you know, that seems obvious, but in the excitement, if you're at a farm and a farmer pulls out stuff, oh, this is really good, and you take a drink and you realize, oh, this is a little weird, but oh, this is $1,000 a pound, it's really good. Smell that mold. Smell that mold. Detect it. So one day we had a farmer, a very good farmer, somebody that we respect highly, and most of his stuff is really good. He pulled out Scarlet Rope from 1980. And so in our hearts, we had tea lust when he said 1980 Scarlet Rope, because we were thinking, oh my God, this is like some of those aged whites or aged raw blacks. We got to have this thing. And obviously the farmer was also in a tea lustful mood, because you could see that he was thinking, yeah, this is going to be something good. His assistant made the tea. And within the first sip, we realized, everybody at the table realized without even saying anything, oops, this hasn't been stored correctly. So it was flat, not accessible as a true cliff tea, even though its origin point was verified. And right away, the farmer said, hey, you know, this goes something else. Gathered everything up.
Tea sadness from tea lust.
Tea sadness. Yes, yes. Big tea sadness, because he had been so excited to share this with us. So those are the things you look for when you're talking about cliff teas. And the last part of that is, if you drink a cliff tea and somehow there isn't minerality in there at all, you need an explanation. And there are several types of explanations, but it better be a good explanation, because generally speaking, every cliff tea, even if it's hidden deep in the background, has the rock rhythm. Lacking the rock rhythm, then usually, but not always, this is a location issue, usually. All right, as usual, I've overtalked. That's nothing new. This is the last live one until May 6th. We are, and by the way, at noon today, the website closes down and it won't reopen until May 2nd or 3rd. So if you're going to order something right now, would be the time to order, because by noon, it'll be closed down. Because we realistically can't fulfill those orders easily during the time we're gone. We hope during the time that you're gone, you enjoy the pre-recorded sessions. Like I said, if you have questions, please go ahead and email us, and as best we can, we'll answer those. We'll certainly answer everything in detail when we get back, if there are any very complicated questions. And we really look forward to seeing everybody when we get back. This will be, we think, a great trip. We think some aspects of it will be fun. We also think many aspects of it will be hard work as we try and figure out what the road should be, if it should be at all in Japan. And these are all things that we're going to be discussing on this trip. And we'll be missing all of you. So stay healthy, and we look forward to seeing you May 6th. Bye-bye now. Take care.
Bye.